Good morning and good afternoon. Thank you everyone for joining us for today's session, an introduction to DISC personality assessments. My name is Jeff Scott and I'm the founder and CEO of Section 810 Communications, and our focus is on helping individuals and organizations increase their level of influence through improved communication skills. Today's session is really near and dear to me because I've been studying and teaching DISC for decades at this point, and I find it incredibly valuable when we're dealing with work relationships or personal relationships. In fact, a lot of the training that we do at Section 810 stems from or originates with the DISC background. So whether it's leadership development, sales training, anything that has to do with interpersonal relationships, knowing yourself and being able to understand and read people around you is incredibly beneficial in increasing your skills in that area. So with that, let's jump right into the presentation. As you can see, we'll be going over a number of things today, providing a quick background on DISC, the direct, inspiring, steady, and conscientious types. We're going to talk about self-awareness, because in order to grow yourself, you need to know yourself. And so we're going to look at how do you become self-aware to understand where you fit within the DISC profile. And then we're going to look at keys to understanding others. In order to be an effective communicator, it's really important to know our audience, read the room, as the expression goes. And so as we go through today's session, what I'll encourage you to do, number one, think about yourself. As we go through the different attributes on the DISC scale, try to determine where you feel you would fit in with that. We have an advanced training where individuals actually get a full assessment and a report indicating where they would fit in. But for today, try to understand, where do you think you fit in the DISC profile? And the second thing I'll encourage you to do, think about at least one person, somebody that you work with. Maybe they work for you, maybe it's your boss, maybe somebody in your personal life. Think about them. Where do you think they fit in to the DISC scale as well? Now, before we even jump in, there's one thing I really want to make clear. There is no right or wrong, good or bad, better or worse when it comes to DISC. We are all complex creations that have a number of different areas that are difficult to understand. But it's important to take a look and say, you know what? I have strengths, because we all have strengths. We also have weaknesses. We're going to look at that. And very often our strengths under stress can actually become our weakness. But the main thing I want you to do as you think about yourself and those around you, don't think, gee, I wish I was more like fill in the blank. No, be the best you that you can be. As Oscar Wilde, the author, said, be yourself. Everybody else is already taken. So just remember that. No better or worse, good or bad when it comes to DISC. So today, for the next 40 minutes or so, we want to provide some new knowledge, make it practical versus theoretical. My philosophy always in training is put a handle on something so you can pick it up and do something with it. Maybe one or two practical things that you can take away today and have a little bit of fun. So let's jump right in. For those of you that have not heard me speak before, very quickly, bio by the numbers. The numbers 3514, 130,009. What in the world do they have to do with anything? Well, as a background, I've got 35 years of experience in different sectors, including enterprise software, quantitative hedge funds, systematic investment area. I've had a chance to work with a number of different companies and travel around the world throughout, especially Asia and Europe. And I put that down there because one of the things I found as I've trained and coached people and spoken around the world, people are way more alike than they are different. And you look at the DISC profile, I've had a chance to teach DISC in India and in Singapore and in different areas, and Europe, Hungary, and we're all very similar in a lot of ways. So I want to share some of those as we go through the program. And then 130,000 crowdsourcing recruits. I had a chance to be on the leadership team of a role in quantitative finance where we were crowdsourcing individuals to participate in our program. We went from 0 to 130,000 in 5 years. Very proud of those numbers. In that, the top right of your screen was really important to me, and I was very proud of this because I spearheaded and led an initiative called Women Who Quant. And it was designed to increase the participation of women in the area of quantitative finance, which unfortunately was very male dominated. Now, people often say, why do you care about diversity and inclusion initiatives like that? Which brings me to number 9. I have 9 kids, not photoshopped, not a stock photo. These are my children. I have 5 girls and 4 boys, and I always want my daughters to have the same opportunities as my boys do. So that's a very quick introduction. So as we go through the origin of human behaviors, it's old. This has been around for centuries. And so as you look through the list here, I'll push you over to the very right to look at William Marston. 1928 is when the DISC assessment really came to be. Now, you may have heard of Myers-Briggs, as you see on the left with Carl Jung, and there's a number of different programs. They're very similar to this. The main thing is trying to get a better read on who we are, what are our instincts, what are our natural tendencies. This has been around for a very, very long time. In fact, in some of these areas, you see with Hippocrates, it was based on excess bodily fluids. And so the sanguine, choleric, melancholy, and phlegmatic, different ways of looking at that. It's been around for a long time. And the key with DISC, don't allow yourself to be put into a box, and please don't put other people in a box. I've seen this when people start to understand a little bit about personalities and they'll say, oh, that person is A, and label them. It's okay to recognize what someone's core strengths or challenges may be, but we're way more complex, and it's important not to put people in boxes. It's not one size fits all. So with DISC, D-I-S-C, the direct, inspiring, steady, and conscientious types, you'll see on the top, the D and the I, they're more outgoing. They're a little bit more gregarious, extroverted, whereas the bottom, the C and the S, they tend to be a little bit more on the reserved side of things. And we're going to look later at different signs you can look at to try to get a feel of what do I think this person may be? What are their natural tendencies? On the left side of your chart, you'll see conscientious and direct. The D and the C, they're more task-oriented. They want to get things done, whereas the I and the S, they tend to be a little bit more people-oriented. We're going to talk about combinations in a moment also, because most people have one primary strength and then a secondary strength. So that's typically how people would score when they run an assessment. Now, the application of DISC can be manifested in a number of different areas. When we do training at Section 810 Communications, we do personal and professional growth, do a lot of leadership training, and DISC is a part of that. Team building events, a lot of companies bring us in to actually have us on site to do a team building day where we'll focus the day on DISC, understanding each other, do some team building exercises. So it's very effective when it comes to understanding those that you work with. Relationships, interviewing, career and sales coaching, there's a lot of different ways the DISC can be manifest. Now, one of the things that I get asked very frequently is, do personalities change over time? Now, people have different thoughts on that. My personal opinion is personalities do not change over time. However, behaviors can and often do. Because when we think about our behavior, it's made up of a number of different things. One is heredity. When we talk about the DISC profile, I firmly believe that we are born a certain way with those attributes. One of the reasons I say that is the slide I mentioned earlier where I have 9 kids. That's legit. Same gene pool, same environmental upbringing, and yet my kids are vastly different from one another. How can 2 children that are born just 3 years apart, grew up in the same environment, be so different? I've experienced it at a very young age. Children tend to exhibit their natural tendencies. So heredity is one part, but then our environment and our role models, they all contribute to our behaviors. What was the family life like growing up? What about work? What about sports? What about school? All these different environments and the people that influenced us in those environments make up our entire behavior. And I've absolutely seen people's behavior change over time. They try to adapt to whatever their environment is. That makes sense. But our personalities themselves, I believe we are hardwired. And with the D, some people just are very, very direct and matter of fact to the point. Some people are incredibly social, want to have fun. Some people are very steady and reliable and dependable. And then others are very, very organized. So the DISC, let's jump in and take a look at each one of those. And we'll start with the D, because sometimes Ds like to be first. With a D personality, they like to be very, very direct, and they're driven and focused on results. With each one of these, we're going to take a little bit of time to dig into them. We're going to come back later and go deeper into more of the strengths and also the challenges that we each have. But when we look at a D, D is direct. They can be considered a driver or a dominant or decisive personality. Not everything does start with a D. They are very control and results oriented. Definitely like control. Their motto is, we'll do it my way. Okay, that's a very common way that a D will manifest is, we're going to do it my way. I want results. I'm going to take control over this. They are very active. A D personality is often noted by their speed in which they do things. Matter of fact, quick decision, quick execution. They just want to get things done. They're driven by authority. A D personality loves to be in a leadership role. It doesn't mean they make better leaders necessarily, because again, everyone has strengths and everyone has weaknesses, but a D thrives on that authority. They like to be in control. They like to delegate. They like to do that. They'll very easily take control. You may have sat in a meeting at some point in your career where it's not really clear who's leading the meeting or what the direction is. A D personality will typically be the one that will jump in and say, why don't we do this, and just take over, because they see a need for leadership, it's a gap, and they want to fill it. They will embrace any change that helps them get results. They are not averse to change at all. Whereas when we look at the S later, S's don't like change. Doesn't make them lesser. It just means that's how they respond. Very comfortable responding to direct confrontation. D's are sturdy. If you say to them, I don't agree with that, they may not like being challenged, but they're not going to be intimidated by that. They're comfortable with a confrontative environment, maybe to a fault at some points, and they love loyalty. If you have a D boss, remember, think about yourself and think about others as we go through this. If you have a D manager, they will absolutely value and treasure your loyalty. Let's get the job done, have their back, and make sure you're taking care of your role. That's something really important. With a D personality, they do have a primary need. We all do. The need of a D is results. I want to see something. It's got to be tangible, quantifiable. I want to see results. And the greatest fear? Losing control. Years ago, I had a very good friend of mine whose dad was a very high D personality. And he had inherited a company from his father, and he just built it up to this very huge enterprise and was very happy doing that, very D oriented. My friend wasn't as much as his dad was. Unfortunately, my friend's dad suffered a heart attack when he was probably in his 50s or 60s. And that put him on the bench, if you will, for a while. He wasn't able to work. And he went into a deep state of depression because he was so used to being in control. And that control was taken away from him, and it was devastating. If you're a D personality, losing control can be one of the worst things. So again, just recognize this. Or if you're close to someone at work or in your personal life, recognize losing control is really a bad thing for a D personality. The eyes around us love to laugh. And I love this picture because they're all just laughing, smiling, and they're not just laughing with a grin. They're smiling. They got the mouth open, the teeth showing. That's very much how an eye will show themselves. They're inspiring. They can be very often persuasive. They love being spontaneous and friendly. Eyes are really known by that. Hey, let's have fun. Adventurous, and they love the spotlight. Their motto is, let's do it the fun way. That's their motto. I have one of my sons is a high ID personality. Okay, so that means he wants to do it my way and the fun way. And when he was young, this was very clear. He's probably 3 years old, and he grabbed my guitar, had no idea what he was doing, took my guitar, sat down. We had the extended family over, and he said, Grandma, sit down there. Dad, sit down over there. Papa, clap your hands. And he's playing the guitar, no idea, but he loved the spotlight, and he was controlling the room. He wanted to make sure that he got the attention on that. That's very indicative of someone who scores high in the I area, because they love a friendly environment. Like a D, they could be active, movement, You can find out typically where someone fits into the DISC scale by how much they move. Are they sedentary or are they a little bit more active? An I is very relationship oriented. They love to be in relationships and to be friendly and to be that life of the party because they're emotional. They're very animated. You can often tell an I personality because they speak in stories and not facts. By the way, if you look at the DISC circle, the opposites, the angles tend to be opposites from each other. A D and an S tend to be very opposite, an I and a C. A C, we'll talk about in a moment, they tend to speak more in facts and statistics, whereas an I personality speaks more in stories. They love a good story. They can be an encourager and a motivator. They can be great on a team because they inspire and make people excited. Sometimes they don't even know why, but they're excited, and enthusiasm is contagious. They treasure great experiences, but here's the key, with others. An I personality is definitely not a loner. They're social. If you're an I, you may find yourself in this position. Working from home may be a challenge for you. In a little bit, I'm going to tell a story when I did a session about 3 years ago, and it was based on how people were responding to the work from home with the pandemic based on their DISC profile. I's like to be around others. Their primary need, recognition, recognition from other. Hey, good job. If you have an I personality on your team, they will thrive on you giving them positive reinforcement. It doesn't mean you have to blow the sunshine pump and say, yeah, everything's great, but they really will thrive on that validation, and they'll even ramp up their productivity when they feel valued and recognized. Their greatest fear, rejection or loss of approval. Just like with a D, loss of control is really difficult for them. With an I, loss of approval, rejection, not being visible. That's why working from home for an I person can be a real challenge because they fall into loneliness and boredom more quickly than others. Again, no right or wrong, it's just the way they are. The S personalities, very predictable, very calm, stable, steady. They're incredible team players, very predictable because they like things in a steady fashion. So you see the reliability, team oriented, all the attributes. I won't read through all the bullets here, but let me go down to the bottom. Seeks acceptance. And I likes attention. They like that fanfare. And S doesn't necessarily need all the fanfare, but they want acceptance. They want to know that they're okay. Safety and security are critical for an S personality. Their motto is, can we do it the easy way? Now, I always have to put a caveat here. That does not indicate laziness, not at all. S's are very hardworking. All of the attributes, very hardworking, can do different jobs and skills, no challenge there. But with an S, they might be of the mindset of, this way has always worked. Why do we have to change it? Can we do it the easy way? Let's go with the path of least resistance and still get the results that we're looking for. That's very common with an S. They like that acceptance and they really dislike the change. S personalities love a team environment. Like the I, remember, I and the S tend to be more relational, whereas a D and a C, they tend to be a little bit more task oriented. So they want that team environment and they're incredibly loyal. Very often I find a D manager with a team built up of S people. I'm not saying that's the best way to build a team because I think diversity is really important. But the reason I see that, I think, is because S's like to be part of a team. They don't clamor for the leadership and they're loyal. And the D's, they like that authority and they really value loyalty within the ranks. So they're easygoing, agreeable, evenly paced. They make really good mediators and listeners. S's are really good at that because they have a lot of, very often, empathy and compassion for other people. They really treasure, here's the key, peaceful relationships. Whereas an I values relationships, and nobody wants a negative relationship, but the S's really value that peaceful element of a relationship. Their primary need is just that, peace. Peace, and I'll add safety. That's really important to an S. And their greatest fear is that loss of security or confrontation. If you're a leader and you have S personalities that are on your team, how you approach discipline, challenges when they do something wrong. We're all imperfect and we're going to make mistakes. How you communicate that is really critical, because an S really fears loss of security and they don't like confrontation. I've seen oftentimes in a business setting, maybe there's a meeting and it gets a little bit heated. There's a little bit of emotion running. The S personalities sometimes will back up because they're not comfortable with that. That confrontation to them can indicate really strong negativity, and they try to avoid that. Unfortunately, that can turn them to the side of saying yes too frequently because they don't want confrontation. If you're an S, you may find that it's difficult to say no. It's difficult to be assertive because you don't want that potential confrontation. Finally, our C personality. C personalities tend to be very, very organized. They've got their charts, their GANs. You can see the GAN chart there. Anything that's systematic is really important to them. They are conscientious. They are compliant. They know that there's a certain way to do things, and protocol is really important. Methodical, analytical, all these attributes are so indicative of a high C personality. I mentioned earlier, I worked in the systematic hedge fund world for many years. And with that, I work with a lot of people who are high C personalities. They thrived on data, statistics, analysis, going through that whole process. Accuracy was really important because their motto is we must do it the right way. There's an absolute right way to do things, and that's critical. One of my sons is, well, now he's 32 years old, but when Jonathan was younger, he came to me one day and he said, Dad, I want to let you know that my birthday is coming up in 4 days. I'm going to turn 5 years old. I said, well, thank you, son. I appreciate you reminding me about that. He said, for my birthday, I would like 3 things. I want this, this, and this. And with that, he turned around and walked away. Okay, thank you, my son. Well, a few days later, just as he predicted, because he's accurate, his birthday did in fact come. So on his birthday, I bought him this, this, and this, which he said, but I'm a loving dad. I also bought him that. So I got him 4 things. So he comes bouncing down the stairs on his birthday morning, all happy. He looks at the kitchen table and he sees 4 gifts instead of 3. He said I wanted 3 things for my birthday, and he was really upset. Now, I laugh at the story, and he knows that I share this story because to him, I broke protocol. There was a right way to do things. If you're a C personality, you may feel that way. When people don't do things the right way, it may drive you nuts. It's really important for you to have things done the right way. Now, his brother, who's the D and the I personality, said, don't worry about it. I'll take the 4th gift. In fact, you have any more, I'll take it all, because he wanted that attention. So with that, the C seeks an environment that honors logic and facts. People that tend to work in computer science, engineering, not across the board, very often they may be C personalities because they love that. Facts are really important. They're process focused. Accuracy, cannot stress enough how important accuracy for those that are a C personality, and the attention to details. I already mentioned protocol, and the fact that the C personality really does treasure perfection. Now, the challenge, we're going to look a little bit later at some obstacles. The challenge with this is the C personality loves perfection of themselves, and sometimes they expect it of others also. And with that, they can become a little bit critical. We'll look at that more. Their primary need, facts. Give me the data. If you're talking with someone who's a C personality, it's really important to recognize this. I spent many years in technology sales. And when I would go on a sales meeting, I would have people from different backgrounds, D, I, S, C in the room. I would typically try to find those that were C oriented. And when it came to talking about a return on investment or the net present value of money, anything that was statistic orientation, I would make sure that I focused on that individual in that conversation because facts are important. The greatest fear of a C personality, criticism. People that are high Cs tend to be very critical of themselves, and sometimes they can be critical of others, but if someone else is critical of them, especially their accuracy, that can be devastated. So just like loss of control for the D, loss of recognition for the I, loss of peace for the S, a loss of approval, and that criticism can be really challenging for a C. Okay, let's do a quick study here. I'm going to use my watch, and I'm going to do a little bit of an exercise called Organize the Numbers. I'm going to pull up a screen in just a moment that's going to have 88 numbers in random order. What I'd like you to do, first find number 1, then number 2, and in sequential order over 30 seconds, I'd like you to find as many numbers as you can, and then go ahead and indicate you can use the chat or the questions, indicate how many numbers you get. So again, I'm going to pull it up for 30 seconds, and with that, what I'd like you to do is find number 1 and sequentially go forward from there. Ready, set, go. Ten seconds. 15. That's 20 seconds. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, stop. So with that, how many did you get? Just curious. You can put it into the chat. Okay, so I see numbers running all over the place here. We've got 3, I've seen 8. Once I had someone get 21. So, and again, this is not an IQ test, so don't be worried. Okay, I see them coming in. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, we're going to do the same exercise again, but with a little bit of a variation on screen. What I want you to do again is start at 1. Don't start where you left off. So if you got 8, I don't want you to look for number 9 yet. Go back to number 1, and I want you to find that. So with that, let's start right now. Again, start with number 1 and continue in sequential order. 10 seconds. 15. That's 20. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and stop. Okay, let's go back to the chat. How many did you get this time? Okay, and then indicate if you got more or less. Wow, I see one huge jump from 3 to 17. Okay. Okay, some got a little bit less this time. That's okay. Most people get a little bit more. Why is that? Again, you can use the chat to indicate, why do you think you got more the second time around? What was different this time? Anybody? Yeah, patterns. I see the comments. Patterns. See, let's go through here a little bit. Look over on the screen and you'll see number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. Yeah, I see the pattern of evaluation. Okay, so we're starting to get a little bit of a pattern here. Number 5, number 6, number 7, and number 8. Okay, so we can see that each time the next number comes up, it's in a quadrant of our chart. And when we recognize the pattern, instead of looking at the whole thing for number 5, we can say, okay, number 5 is going to be up in the top left. I can cut by 75% the amount of space I'm looking at to find the number. It's all about patterns. The reason we do this exercise is when we understand a little bit about ourselves and about others, we can understand patterns in personality, patterns in behavior. We can start to understand, number 1, for me, okay, if I'm dealing with a stressful situation, how am I going to respond to that? What's going to be my natural inclination or way to respond? What about people around me? If I have a boss who's a D personality and I see their stress, how are they going to respond to that stress versus maybe someone who's an S personality? Understanding patterns is really important, because when we look at the DISC, the different attributes sometimes are likened to animals in different studies. For example, the D, it's a lion. Who's the lion? The king of the jungle. That's kind of how a D thinks about themselves. They rule. They're the ones that are the king of the jungle. What about the I? They're like an otter. Have you ever gone to an aquarium and see the otter? What's in their enclosure? Balls, toys, anything to play with, because they'll have fun with anything. And sometimes an I personality, our friends at work or at home who are I's, They can just have fun with everything. It's not only the glass is half full, but wow, what a beautiful glass. Sometimes I's can be eternal optimists and find fun in everything. The S's, they're like a golden retriever. Now this picture is a little bit lethargic. I'm not saying that an S personality is like that. A golden retriever is known to be very, very loyal, very faithful. What do they say? Man's best friend. And S personality, if you're an S, you've got tremendous attributes and positivity in that you're loyal, you're there, you're supportive. It's incredibly beneficial. And then of course the beaver. My, what a big river we can stop with those two front teeth, because they're enterprising. They can do so much with so little, and building the dam and being like that. And a C personality has tremendous attributes in that same way as a beaver. So again, every one of us has strengths and weaknesses. And as I mentioned earlier, sometimes we have a combination. We may be a little bit of a DI, or we may find that we're more of an IS combination. Sometimes people are SC. By the way, SC is a very, very common combination that I found in training and coaching with this, or DS. You'll notice I didn't say combination of DS or IC, because again, the opposites tend to be just that, opposites of each other. It's hard to be a planner and spontaneous at the same time, because planning spontaneity is somewhat of an oxymoron. So again, recognize where you may fit into this area. I mentioned earlier, I had an opportunity when the pandemic first came about to do a number of free sessions that we did in this new work from home environment. And I had a number of former colleagues and associates of mine that worked in the hedge fund world with me. And I asked them to be a part of a workshop, a panel discussion we did on our responses to the work from home environment with the pandemic based on our DISC profile. Now, these individuals, Ksenia, Sophia, Sahana, and Yelena, were from all different countries. We had Switzerland and Singapore and India and Russia represented. So this had nothing to do with the cultural environment, but you can see by the charts at the bottom, Ksenia was a high D, Sophia was a high I, Sahana was a high S, and Yelena's a high C. Now, I bring this up here because, again, we're all different, and there was no right or wrong. But one of the things we talked about in particular was working from home. What's it like for you? And Yelena said, as a high C, I love working from home. I'm alone, no one bothers me, and I can completely focus on my task. It's a dream come true. Now, with that, Sophia jumped in and said, yeah, it's a dream, all right. It's a nightmare because I'm a high I. Not being in an office means no one says, hi, Sophia, how are you? I like your shoes. You want to get lunch today? That social element for her was so missing in working from home. So we all respond to stress a little bit different based on our profile. No right, no wrong. It's just the way that we respond to different things. So let's take some of the balance of our time here, go a little bit deeper into this. If you'd like a copy of the presentation, reach out to me afterwards. You'll have my email, again, jeff.scott@section810.com. Happy to provide a copy of the slides for you here. So I won't read through every bullet, but let's look at a couple. We talked at a high level about the strengths of a D personality, but they tend to be very bold and confident and decisive. And again, I mentioned it before, but just because you're a D personality does not mean you're a better leader than others. You might be a good leader, but anybody can be a good leader because there's a lot of different attributes that make up a good leader. But one of the keys here, they're decisive. A D personality will typically look at the facts and make a quick decision. They don't waffle back and forth. Make a decision, they stick with it. They tend to be very productive and strong-willed, very independent. They don't need a team around them. Sometimes the mindset of a D personality is, if it is to be, it's up to me. And with that, they make sure they get things done. Over on the right, goal-oriented, excelling in emergencies. You know, they're very good at doing that. Comfortable leading others, and they may thrive on resistance. They don't back into a corner if they're resisted. Sometimes it's like, good, let me use this opportunity to prove what I feel on something. Now, every personality has obstacles, challenges, weaknesses, call it what you will. Very often, our strengths, when put under pressure, become our weaknesses. I've heard the expression once say, think about garbage. Garbage can smell bad, right? What happens when you leave garbage out in the heat? It really can smell bad. And sometimes when we're under pressure, our weaknesses really get magnified. Sometimes our strengths can become our weaknesses. For example, thriving on resistance is one thing that can be a strength, but becoming argumentative is a weakness. Or being decisive is good. That's an attribute, but being opinionated sometimes can go the far end of that and be negative. So these are things we talk about. Being busy and multitasker, that's great, but what about over on the right, being impatient and unable to relax? These are all things that we have to watch for. If you're a D personality, be cognizant of this. Doesn't mean you change everything. People that say, I'll focus on my weaknesses, I say, no, don't do that. Be aware of your weaknesses. Focus on your strengths. Maximize, exploit your strengths. If you can find people around you to offset your weaknesses, even better. Be aware of them, but magnify your strengths. The I personalities, we've already talked about them. They are the life of the party. They're persuasive, charismatic, they're enthusiastic and friendly. All of these things are so good, right? They can inspire others, are likable, can be charming. Sounds wonderful until they get to the point of being under pressure, and they can be forgetful, undisciplined, undependable. All the things you see here, they can not only enjoy the spotlight, but need the spotlight. I've seen I personalities that really like being that life of the party, but when they're stressed, they try so hard to fill that need that they become almost insatiable. And they just try to draw all the attention to themselves. And at that point, it can almost border being narcissistic. And it's important to just recognize that. Take a step down. It's okay. If you're under stress, for all the personality types, sometimes the key is just to recognize, why am I acting this way? What's really causing the stress? And then to address the issue and not allow our responses to run rampant without being kept in check. So becoming distracted and impulsive, all these things can be a challenge with an I personality. The S's, I mentioned, they're great team players. They're hard workers, but they're quiet. Very often they do that without looking for all the attention, but they're great. They're steady, they're secure, they can be sentimental. Empathy is one of the biggest attributes that I find with an S personality. They're great listeners. I mentioned before, they can be good mediators because they're really good at that. They understand I have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Maybe I should listen twice as much as I talk. They're really good with that. However, when put under pressure, they can be a little bit too laid back. Going with the flow is great to a degree, but becoming indecisive can be a challenge, especially in a work environment where it's important that we make decisions. Even if it's not our strong suit, we need to do that. Resisting change, that I would say is one of the biggest challenges an S personality faces. Change is not always welcome, and sometimes they can resist it, digging their heels quietly. They won't vocally oppose the change, but what they will do is really start to dig their heels in and resist it. Sometimes that easy pace is good, but it can become a little bit slow to start and slow to keep going. So it's important, again, recognize, are you an S personality? What does this mean to you? What are things you can do to, again, recognize these different things? The other one I'll end with on this slide, the third from the top on the right side shuts down in confrontation. This is something I found. When there's a disagreement, disagreements are not negative. In work, when we have disagreements, sometimes that gives us a chance to look at things from a different perspective. However, an S personality will say, no, this is a conflict. It doesn't have to be. And even a conflict doesn't have to be a confrontation. But what happens is sometimes an S personality will shut down. I was training and coaching for an organization here in Connecticut a while back, and the leader of this group said to me, I have somebody on my team, and when they don't like the way things go in a conversation, they just shut off their camera because it was a virtual environment. And we laughed at it, but it was really difficult because that made everybody else really feel like, what's going on? They just completely shut down in that confrontation. So don't do that. If you find yourself in that environment, it's okay. In fact, we have a whole class we conduct just on assertiveness, learning how to be a little bit more assertive without being aggressive or combative, but to learn how to be assertive. The C personality, we talked about their strengths, incredibly analytical, can be even genius prone. I've seen people that are high C personalities that are just brilliant. It's amazing the knowledge that they have. They can be self-sacrificing, idealistic, which can be good and bad sometimes, high quality work, very orderly and organized, all the attributes you see here. Deep thinker. Very often a C personality is like this, hand on the face, that thinker pose, because they're deep in thought, they're analytical. Very, very positive attributes. However, under pressure, a C's strengths can become their weaknesses. They can become really critical of themselves or critical of others, because they value accuracy so much that they can become perfectionistic, and that can be a real challenge. They can be a little bit rigid and then over analytical. Sometimes instead of making decisions and move, they can just get stuck in that paralysis of analysis and feel like I just can't move because I don't have all the information. Almost become a little bit too reliant on facts and data, and they can be really difficult to please when they get to that spot. So again, these are all the different things to look at. We all have strengths and we all have weaknesses, and it's just important to recognize that. Now, let's go back to our questions for a moment here. Some patterns are easier to figure out than others. So as you look at these different areas, what do you think the top left is? Thoughts on that? I'll look at some of the comments coming in. Top left. Okay, I see tiger. Okay, multiple tiger. Yeah, and that's most people think that that's a tiger. What about that top right? What do you think that one is? Okay, I see dog, cow, Dalmatian, rabbit. Okay, a little bit different on that one. How about the bottom right? Yeah, most people think that one is a giraffe. And then the bottom left, maybe this is the easiest pattern, but what do you think the left? Yeah, the zebra. So when we look at these, tiger, Dalmatian, giraffe, and zebra. Now, almost everybody gets the zebra. Tiger and giraffe very often. The top right, the Dalmatian, not always. I get a lot of cows and rabbits and different things, or sometimes just dog. The reason we put this up here is some patterns are easier to figure out than others are. Now, when you're working with someone, and I've been studying DISC for decades and using it both in my business and personal life for many, many years, but I found that there are certain indicators that we can look for, certain signs that can give us an idea of what someone might be. Again, not to put them into boxes, but to understand how can I communicate most effectively with this person. When I would go on a sales call years ago and have a room of 12 people, I couldn't say, would you all mind taking 15 minutes and doing a quick assessment for me? No, I had to go by handshake. Okay, eye contact. I meet someone who's giving me a firm handshake, look me in the eye, but not focusing on small talk. That's probably going to be the D personality. What about someone who's a little bit more slow, passive, a little bit more relaxed? They might be the S personality. What about their conversational style? Is someone really quick, matter of fact, to the point? Maybe that's a D or a C. Do they speak to me in facts? Do they look up when they talk? I have someone, a very close friend, who every time I talk with them, they're looking up here, almost as if there's a cue card in the clouds. And I know that that's their high C personality because they're thinking in facts. And that indication when someone looks up shows they're deep in thought. That's the way they speak in facts. Or do they talk in stories, which is going to be more likely to be an I personality? And with that, are they smiling? Are they laughing? That's indicative of that. Sometimes the way people work, do they have a position that requires a lot of authority? Maybe they're a D personality and really enjoy that. Do they dress or drive maybe a little bit more in an ostentatious manner? Are they looking for that recognition, flashiness? Maybe that's more on the I side. These are not one size fits all. Keep in mind, these are just some things to look at. Laughter. Again, if I say something funny to someone who's an I personality, they're gonna laugh. If I say something funny to someone who's a C personality, they might say, that's really funny. They speak it because that's funny, that's a fact. But laughing it, that's a demonstrative action. And so sometimes that punctuality, again, not to put people in boxes, C's protocol is important. They tend to be very much on time, whereas an I, there's usually a story and why they're late. That's okay. It just happens. Not that it's okay being late, but it's okay to recognize certain things. What about someone's body, or excuse me, the way they interrupt and the words they use? A lot of words, a lot of interruptions, could be an I, maybe a D. Body language, again, someone who's defensive versus someone who's maybe more relaxed posture. The relaxed posture tends to be an S personality. They often sit or lean. A D personality, I like to say they take up airspace, stand up, elbows out, hands on hips, anything like that. The last one's a little bit funny, cell phone usage. At the end of the day, sometimes people in meetings forget to turn off their phone, right? You ever had that happen and a phone rings, or you're in a movie theater or whatever it is? A D personality will typically just say, hey, I'm in a meeting, call you back. And then they just hang up their phone and then they put it back on vibrate, whatever it may be. You know, the C personality protocol is really important. If a C's phone rings and it's not supposed to ring, they're embarrassed. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Hold on, let me turn that off. I'm so sorry. Very apologetic because again, they broke protocol. And S doesn't want confrontation. So when their phone rings and it's clear that it's their phone, they ignore it. It's not my phone. I think it must be their phone. It's not my phone. You know, whereas an I's live in stories. So when an I's phone rings and it's not supposed to, hey, how you doing? Hey, I'm in a meeting. What? Go out tonight? Yeah. Hey, you guys want to go out tonight? They just make it into a story and they bring everybody else into the story with them. Now, again, humorists look at it, but there are lots of indicators that we can use to determine where do we think someone is going to fit in with the DISC profile. And keeping in mind, please, it's not about boxes. Wherever you find you may fit on the DISC profile, you are not worse or better than anybody else. We all have natural strengths and tendencies that we use, and we all have challenges. Recognize that when your strengths are put under pressure, or when you're put under pressure, your strengths may become your weaknesses. Don't put yourself in a box, don't put others in a box, but recognize who you are to be the best you that you can be, and learn how to communicate and relate more effectively with those around you. And with that, we'll wrap up the session. Just as a reminder, you can scan the code here. The section810.com website has an events page with a lot of different sessions. Some are free, some are short sessions, some are longer. Some include coaching, like the advanced DISC session includes a customized, tailored report that you can use based on your assessment, along with coaching that you can take advantage of as well. And we cover a number of different subject matters as well. With that, I'll take a look, see if there's any questions here, but I want to thank you all for being a great audience. It's always a pleasure to present this type of workshop with you. I hope that you found it trustful and beneficial, and you're able to use some of these skills in the future. So thank you very much, and I see the comments. You're absolutely welcome. Thank you for joining us, and I look forward to speaking with you all on a future event. Thank you, and have a great day.